which is very much a systems perspective and sits at the level of transformative change within policy making space, ESG space, etc. And Marie, if you could introduce yourself. Marie is a long-standing colleague and friend who has incredible perspective on this topic. She's based in South Africa. She heads up an organization called Sculpture, which does a tremendous amount of work on transformative policy frameworks and transformative processes around sustainability and environment. And then following Marie, just to welcome in Lwaboshi's perspective, which again brings in the lived reality context, some of the historical precipitants that have been seen in his community in the DRC, and some of the challenges and potential approaches that he is seeing. So Marie, I'm going to stop our share now and come in with lived experience. And Lwaboshi, if you could bring your perspective again. What have you been experiencing? What is your community's experience? What is your take on the issues of climate and the way that climate is affecting learning?
Thank you very much, Madam Robin. And I'm sorry to see how the Madam Paramon got a problem of network. So talking about climate change in my community, Madam, I tell you that maybe in former time, people in my community couldn't know what climate change was. But actually, from 2018 up to present, to the present moment, I tell you, even a kid of 2 years knows how dangerous effects of climate change are on communities. My community has experienced an impact of climate change from 2018 up to now, and this was seen through an intensified rainfall, which caused a lot of damage on the community. Most of houses, I tell you, up to present, more than 10,000 houses have been carried away, and more than 20 persons died. Some of the land are no longer lived on by people, and those people affected, some of the people affected by the climate change, by the flooding. I mean, here in our community, the problem of the flooding, maybe in the North Kivu, where they experience the volcano eruption. But here in the South Kivu province, especially in Uvira and the Fizi territory, here we experience the flooding, just because our city, as I told you in our pre-meeting, our city is crossed by more than 16 rivers. There I put apart some streams. And as the city is in the middle of the lake and a chain of mountains called Mitumba, chain of mountains, then when there are heavy winds which fall down, they carry with them heavy stones, with really heavy stones, which when those heavy stones reach the living space, I mean here the town, so most of the houses are carried away. And why do these rainfalls carry easily those heavy stones and affect the soil? Just because our soil is no longer protected, because if my memory serves me well, and when I tried to check in the history, when the Belgians came here, and especially in my community, they planted a lot of trees. But when we reached the year 1994 and 1996, when the war which opposed the President Mobutu and the Kabila took place, so most of the soldiers that came from other countries and installed in Congo, they started using those trees, cutting them without planting any. So it came to a period when they went back, but also we remained here with some fractions of armed groups. So they also live in the forest, and they use all those trees to find their firewood and to make some charcoals, so that they can just sell those charcoals and get some money. So most of the highlands, most of the hills, most of the mountains are now knocked, while the city is down the mountains. So when there are heavy rains, so the mountains, the soil on the mountains are no longer solid and easily carried by those by waters. Accept that tautology, waters I don't want to get in a grammatical issue, but those waters coming from different streams, different rivers, they they pour, those waters pour into the city and they cause damage. And the effect of this problem is actually visible, because until now, when there are some Sunday, when the Sunday is growing, so everybody must get out of the house. Even the place where I am, in my house, if it rains during the night, I can't sleep. Then I'm watching, observing whether some river can deviate and cause damage. And we are now living without any peace regarding the flooding damage in our community. As I mentioned, Uvira had more cutters, but most of those cutters have been carried away and the people were relocated. But till now, they are still facing the problem of the place where the government can take them. The government doesn't have any place to take those people. So they are experiencing really a serious problem, which also contribute to the vulnerability of their life. And most of them are living in schools. So in schools, but when after COVID-19, they were kicked out from the classes. Then they built some tent in those playing yard of some of the schools where they live. That's what I could share with the people and how our community is affected. But some of the organizations really conjugating effort to restore the environment landscape, but till now we haven't seen some of the actions on the ground aiming at creating or restoring the environment landscape as it was in former time. And as I told you last time, in our organization, we are developing some concept node project regarding environment restoration. See whether we will share it with some of the donors that invest in environment and agriculture, to see whether we can start planting trees and also educate the community how they can handle this problem by looking for some local responses, local solutions. Here, our perspective here is to multiply, to produce some plants, especially trees that can just produce fruit, and distribute them to local populations, and make sure each compound get only one tree to plant and take care of it, and see whether in the forthcoming years this community will no longer experience such problem of flooding and damage related to the climate change. Thank you very much, madam. And if there are some questions, I'm ready. I'll come back with responses or some clarities regarding.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lwaboshi. So, you know what really seems to be the case is that the accelerated impact of climate has made your entire community acutely sensitive and aware to the risks that they have, and that it's a daily presence in their lives. When is the next episode going to happen? And perhaps, I mean, in your community, how high is the awareness of the consequences of deforestation and how important it is to re-stabilize soil, etc.?
Thank you, Robin, and thank you so much, Lwaboshi, for such a powerful presentation. When you're talking about the effect of the floods and the effect of deforestation, you are speaking my mind and what we have observed in Kenya. You see, with the food insecurity, people have encroached the forests. They have felled down the trees, looking for our landmass where they can practice agriculture, so that they can have food on their table. And in as much as we are talking about climate change, but again, there's another evil, there's another force of food insecurity, of hunger. So you see, now hunger is actually contributing a lot when it comes to climate change. And of course, with hunger, of course, what does it mean? With hunger, what comes out of hunger is conflicts, as people scramble for the scarce resource that is land. So you see, there's climate change, and as a result of climate change, there is hunger. As a result of hunger, there is conflict. And now it becomes a chain of issues. And that's why when Robin was doing the presentation, of course, people said that it needs to be, because it is a topical topic, it needs to be part and parcel of our curriculum. Right away from the lower grades across all the levels of our education systems. Of course, we have had leaders talking about climate change, but are they walking the talk? That's another big thing. Talking is one thing, and walking the talk is another thing. So it's quite a good conversation, and I'm really looking forward to hearing of those great views.
Yeah, absolutely. So perhaps we can just open up now to everybody who's in the room, just for a little bit of an open resonance. So reflections from your own personal experience. What has Lwaboshi precipitated in your thinking when he's talking about his community's experience of climatic change and climatic catastrophe? And perhaps we can just have a little bit of an open conversation about this. And then, Marie, glad to see you back in the room, but would really love to hear the perspective from yourself and also from Mohammed, given your sharing what your position is, Mohammed, around sort of the big picture. So let's just have a little resonance back from everybody in the room. What are your experiences? What has Lwaboshi's sharing opened up in terms of your thinking about your community's experiences? And anybody who would like to share, just pop your hand up, and we will go into a time of just some open conversation. Winfred. Carry on, Winfred.
I think for me, yeah, for me is a combination of both Lwaboshi's comments and Andrew's comments. As I mentioned, I come from a small county in Kenya called Laikipia, and we are on the we're on the slopes of Mount Kenya. So what happens is previously there was what we used to call the forest land scheme, whereby farmers would be allowed to go to the forest, farm on patches of land where the trees had been harvested. And then once they would grow their crop and grow trees at the same time. And once the trees get to a certain height and you can no longer farm there, then you move to the next patch. That was before, tree felling was outlawed here, and Kenya Forest Service does not, sell trees anymore. So when that was blocked up, it means that the food that was coming from the forest area doesn't come from there anymore, right? And now we have the lower ends where there is no water, and the pastoralists need water for their cattle. So what do? They come into the forest land up Mount Kenya now. So these people would be traveling 90, 100 kilometers to just go to the forest so that the cattle can have pasture. All this time, you would find, again, as an educator, you would find that these children who belong to these communities are not going to school. That is number one. Number two, the economy of this place was at some point being supported by the farmers in the forest who were growing this crop, and now they don't. So again, that's why I'm saying that this has been sparked by Andrew's comments as well as Lwaboshi's comment. We had a system whereby we were able to sustain the economic aspect, the food aspect, and take care of the climate change as well. This being a policy issue, and maybe Marie is better placed, and Mohammed as well, to how do we go back to an old system that was working previously, that sorted out some of these issues? That, yes, we blocked up because we were, maybe there was a lot of illegal logging going on and all that. But didn't we kill something good that was coming from that same thing, right? Those trees that haven't been harvested in more than 30, 40 years are now just rotting away. So government did pay up, because they did pay, whether it's the farmer or it's the askari or whoever, to take care of those trees. And now they're not making any money out of it either way, because no one can harvest those trees. And those trees were put there for commercial purposes. I'm not talking about the indigenous, trees. I'm talking about the commercial trees, cypress, pine, normal eucalyptus and stuff like that. So they're ready for harvesting, but they cannot be touched for one reason or the other. So in as much as, yes, rain is fewer, temperatures are going higher and all those other things, what is it that we're doing as policymakers? What is it that we're doing as leaders that is contributing to this? Because I feel that sometimes knee-jerk reactions and policy making, emotively, yeah, I found somebody falling a tree, so let's just outlaw everything. Eventually, it just leads to more mess around the whole thing.
Oh, what a fantastic perspective, and I think really the concept of policy frameworks and their unintended consequences, and the inability to reflect on those and be able to maneuver within them and shift. So powerful from that sharing. Thank you so much, Winfred. Lily.
Thank you so much, Robin. And thank you all the previous speakers. I think what they have said is really something that is cross-cutting. It's something that we see running across most of the countries in Africa. And both the policy elements, but I want to narrow into the aspect of, when we look at the global picture, usually we sort of cloud the impact of all this on the individual, especially in my case, the individual child. Whenever we look at issues around conflict, or we look at issues around abuses, or just lack of education, as Winfred has just talked about, we tend to look at it in a very global and glossy lens. If we look individually at each of those children, how are each of those individual children affected? It is horrendous. just you look at, for example, a community starts moving away from where they originally were towards the forest, as in the case of Winnie. In my case, they'd probably be moving away long distances towards some water point that, or some place that they've had there is some water for their animals. As they're moving away, you've got girls and boys, little children, who are also expected to do this 100-kilometer trek. It's not only the adults who are doing the 100-kilometer trek, it's also the little children. These children lose out on health support, they lose out on education, they lose out on protective care, and even the whole process around how do we even start the move? Like, is there a way that responses can be made to stop the move in the first place so that they don't have to move from one point to another? As they're moving onto other people's private property, and then the conflict begins. When there's conflict, it's always assumed that it's the men who are fighting. We've had so many stories of children being abducted, being raped, and being abused just because of that conflict. The children are being raped. Just because of that conflict, the women are being raped. So it goes back to an individual case, like the person who could run the fastest is the one who is going to be affected most. So even when the conflict happens between government and the community, where the community are trying to get into a land space that they're not allowed to get into, the person who ultimately gets the worst repercussion is the child, or the woman, or the person with a certain disability that doesn't allow them to be able to quickly comprehend what they're doing and run for safety. Either you're blind, or you're crippled, or you have one sort of form of disability or the other, and that just makes you more vulnerable than everybody else. And you end up suffering the impact of a conflict that you were not even a party to. You didn't ask to move to that location, you didn't ask to move from your previous home, and now all this happens to you. So sometimes, even as we look at the policies, we need to ask ourselves, are these policies all inclusive? Are they also looking at the rights and the basic rights of not only the human, but of the child? I have seen it from my experience in Ethiopia. The drought has caused not only, there's been movement, we've had families who their land can no longer produce, so they leave their children with their grandparents and they come to the city to look for employment with the hope that they can get something to take back home. But while the children are alone in their homes, they're being abused by the community members. You find girls have been raped because they've been left there to continue with their education. Others have been abducted. And if they have to move with their family, they're also going into a space where they're not protected at all. When girls are expected to go and fetch water, because that is their role, traditional role, they're walking farther and farther away from home. First, it was walk 1 kilometer to the water point dried. Now go 2 kilometers, then it's 10 kilometers. So a child is on the road the whole day in search of water. Half the time, these children are also abused on the way. And some of them, by the time they reach the water point, other bigger people push them off the line. And so they can't come back in time even to do anything. They're tired, exhausted, with very little water, and it's not enough for the family. So it's a real, when we look at the impact of climate on society, it is big. But when we narrow it down and see the story of one individual person, particularly the child and the vulnerability it causes, then it really brings out the impact. And that tells us that there's a lot we have to do to ensure that this stops. Thank you.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you, Lily. Thank you. And, I think this statistic that's so often flung around. So Africa contributes 5% to global emissions, and yet it bears the brunt of climate change issues, is just exactly this that you've raised, that it's at an individual level, the level of vulnerability on this continent is so high, and the level of resilience is really low. And the compounding effect of climate and all the ramifications, all the knock-on effects of that simple change in your water availability or your food availability has these huge ramifications, and the place that they are felt most is always the pain point. So as a continent, we are the most vulnerable. And on our continent, the most vulnerable of us are, again, always children and women. And that was really powerful. Thank you. So anybody else who would like to just reflect back a little bit? And then Marie, if we could just sort of let that segue into, so what does that mean? How do we transmit this reality so that the decisions being made can be felt at the level of the greatest vulnerability and not just look clever on paper? Anybody else who'd like to just reflect back before we give over to Marie? Just pop your hand up.
I see Lily's hand is up, although she's muted. I don't know whether she rose when she was talking or she wants to speak again. Lily, you want to speak again?
I think it was probably from before.
Sorry, that's a legacy hand.
Okay,
Rashid.
Okay, Rashid.
So Rashid, carry on.
Rashid, you are muted.
Hello.
Hi,
Yes,
Rashid.
Rashid. We can hear you.
Hi, everyone. This is Rashid from Young African Advocacy Initiative. It's a great topic of climate change, and giving a recap on our side. Climate change it's a very, 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 very important issue to address this side, because previously we've been affected with floods. We've also seen people's house getting down because of too much floods. So it is something that we surely need to address. And on my side, I'll be just willing and looking forward to working in any plan that comes to solve this. Otherwise, thank you so much. That's what I had for today. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rashid. So Marie, let's try again. Just to reflect. I think you probably picked up at least Lily's reflection on
Yes.
what Waboshi was sharing, but really, having then entered in from the perspective of what is the impact, how is it felt as a lived reality, and all of the compounding factors around what role does poor policy-making decision play, or short-sighted policy decision-making, which looks like it's the right decision at the outset, but consequences show possibly not. What role does that play? So over to you.
So I hope you can hear me. Yeah, that's working. So I'm really apologize. I'm in Cape Town and I thought that we will have internet, but obviously this is a technological boycott for a very powerful dialogue for paradigm shift. So, I mean, I've got a lot of what you were saying, and I think it's that difference of felt and live reality is a big issue. And when I started talking earlier, one of the things that we have to realize is being at international level or even at regional or national level, when we speak about policy making, we have to realize that the people that are involved in this process have a different reality of what they are trying to address. And I think that's one of the challenges that we are facing, is about how do we get the policymaker, being from overseas, international, or also from our own country, to really understand what climate change means for people on the ground. That is not just about market development, that is not just about the carbon market or mitigation, that is not about bringing foreign investment, but it is about survival, as we've heard. It is really about survival in Africa. And I think one of the elements when we speak about policy making is, and I'm an environmental lawyer by trade, and I really, as I was explaining, I don't know if you heard that, but my first conference of the parties, international negotiation, that's where I lost a bit of my heart and of my soul around climate change, because I realized we could speak at lawyers, we could speak at policymakers, but actually we were spending more time fighting about a comma or word that really aligning our intent and why we were here and what we were trying to achieve. And I think one of the challenges that we have about policy making is what's the incentive? Why are we developing these policies? What is it motivating us? And if you look at it, there's a lot of focus on mitigation still to that stage. And we have to be honest to say, what's motivate mitigation? It's market creation. I'm not being cynical, but you will find much more focus on mitigation policies than on adaptation policy, because why? There is a market. There is, why are we having electric vehicle in Europe? Let's not be naive. We're not having electric vehicle in Europe because we wanted to save Earth. We're having electric vehicle because it is a new market that is rescuing a sector that was not really growing. And so I think we have to challenge and we have to ask ourselves question, what is it that South Africa or Africa want in terms of policy? And I think the policy is about the development of the people, the survival of the people, and bringing that in an economy of food security, in a context of safety and security, in a context of water availability. And so the question is, how do you bring this reality to the policymaker? And how do you challenge the status quo, and how do you bring paradigm shift? And one of the last points that I want to raise is, to me, I'm still, after having dealt with climate change for 20 years, from policy to on the ground, I really feel that Africa has a leading role to play in the paradigm shift on how we talk about climate and how do we try to address it. And I really believe that local solutions are key, really to adapt and to build resilience. And my question is, how do we use the belief system that we have in Africa about our relationship with nature? How do we bring that to shift the paradigm around our economic system? Because when we speak about climate change, we have to realize it's linked to the way we consume anything. And so how do we use the way that many Africans are linked to nature? They are feeling nature every day. How do we use our history as African, or you use your history as African, to really shift consciousness and our relationship and mental model around it? So to me, policy has a role to play, but it's about the why, and it's about what the ultimate goal around this policy. And I'm not sure playing in the current rule of the system, we're going to achieve what we need for the continent and for people in Africa. So it is. I'm coming with like, this is the open space and safe space, and it's 20 years of having given a lot of my energy and heart and soul in this discussion, and I just feel that we have to come with new tools and new way of thinking.
Absolutely, and figuring out how to navigate that disillusionment, frustration, how to shift things is partly why we would like to have this discussion as well, because it's easy to kind of just find it so frustrating and disillusioning. And is there a way of reimagining the locus of control, thinking, community engagement, awareness? Mohammed, love to hear your perspective.
Yes, thank you very much. And I really was, I would say, fooled by what, the different discussions, but what Mary, as a lawyer, just saying. I would like Mary to say that I support what you said for my 45 years of experience in this question of capacity building for climate adaptation and not mitigation, because mitigation, as you said, is a market item or market domain or something like that. There is resource for that, but there is not much resources for the adaptation. And the people who needs adaptation are, anyway, I would just say 99% of Africa. I don't want to plead too much. Everyone spoke about that, the importance of that, and that the African communities didn't contribute much to the derailment of climate, but they are supporting the maximum impact, the most important impact. So what you said is completely full. So what I suggest, Robin, is what Mary said. If possible, it should be a small 1 to 2 page note to be circulated. It is there. It's a reference talk. It's a reference message. It's a reference for me. And believe me, 45 years working on that, and I find from me as meteorologist, but I find from another perspective, from a lawyer perspective, it is more compelling in a way, because we are not speaking the only one about meteorology, but people who are impacted by this climate. So that is my first suggestion. The second is what she said. I would like to support item by item or line per line for all the other colleagues. We need to find homegrown solutions. We don't need to wait too much from outside. We need to review what has been experimented, what has been successful, and we call that in a way homegrown or community-led climate adaptation solution. We call them climate solution, but it is more to say, to go frankly, climate adaptation. There is some mitigation light, but in the climate adaptation solution, to be able to improve our resilience to a changing climate for which we are not responsible, but we are impacted. So we need to do something. And what she said, don't wait too much. And so coming back now to the education, yes, we do what you can today. We select all the climate solution or climate adaptation solution or environmental solution that we know, and we see how we can upgrade them in a way using whatever we have as technology, as science, as research. I think there is plenty of things which has been done, which is available. So we need to look for the solution and upgrade them or make them actual. The moment, if before, if you were using wind-up radio, developed the first time in Cape Town in South Africa in the time of in the 98. So now maybe we use a cell phone, something like that, just to pass the message instead of maybe using. But there was a solution. There is a solution. We need to work on them. So in summary, so that we do what we can now, let's identify the climate solution. Those climate solutions would be our textbook for the education. We have some solution. So, and from there, textbook for education, which means that it will be the material to educate, and we need to educate as much as possible for today and for tomorrow. Over.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mohammed.
Yes. Thank you so much, Mohammed. And I think, just to a little bit center this discussion in an education perspective, I think education has a pinch role to play, of course. We know for sure that policy making is very, very important, but we know that I don't know where I brought this up someday, but it is very, very unfortunate that a lot of policymakers in the world, decision makers, including leaders, who have impact on these decisions, they are people who have passed by schools. They were students once. They were in schools, and I don't know where what happened, where the failure happened that made some of them at least focus either as policymakers or because we need to also bring into table of discussion the corporate greed, which is one element in all this, and probably the major element. corporate greed is the most important thing that sometimes people forget to talk about. But it's the lobbies and the economic benefits and companies' profits and corporate greed that is responsible for most of what is happening in the world when it comes to the climate crisis, in terms of depleting energies and depleting resources, and including depleting the resources of Africa by sometimes non-Africans, most of times non-Africans, who are depleting the resources of Africa and jeopardizing lives of people in this continent. And as I said, yeah, these people, including the managers, they go through education. But as an educator myself and as a professor, I think that there is very little done in terms of teaching about what business means. Business is not just about profits, and corporates should not only focus on profits, but they have to also focus on ethics. And bringing in an interesting guy who wrote about this and talked about this, Edward Freeman, through his stakeholder theory, who said that conflict, talked about conflict and said conflict is not always bad. That is to say, it's through pushing, it's through conflict, and when I say conflict, I mean pushing. So civil society pushing towards better decision making at the policy levels and more accountability at the corporate world. I think these are also issues that need to come into mind when we talk about this, but how can we frame these in education? And that's one question we would like probably to ask and reflect on, maybe today, maybe later. Yes.
Fantastic, thank you. Maria, I see that your hand is up, so if you'd like to jump in.
Yeah, just to reflection based on what I've heard, which is, I mean, there's so much coming out. It's such a rich discussion, because that's really where we're going to the, you know, taking a system approach, touch on a lot of things, and I think it bring, you know, that's where there's a lot of thought at the moment to address climate change or biodiversity, you know, degradation, or the impact, negative impact on natural environment. There is a lot of question, or even social impact, negative social impact. There's a lot of question going back to the discussion around business, about the purpose of business in society. And that's where one of the shift in society and in policy could change is about what the purpose of business in society. And actually, there's a lot of interesting discussion around the world about, have we actually defined that in our context, in our policy? And there's also interesting discussion about that at a banking level. And then the second point is, you know, when we speak about corporate greed, and that's why for me climate change is really enabling that system thinking, is corporate greed is one thing, but as I always say, because I work a lot with private sector, it's still human people, it's still human being beyond a company. So people are still making decisions. And as much as we think we have to bring ethics, we also have to shift the system about the definition of success. And we work a lot with CEO and understand the mindset, but also understand what are the indicators of success in business, and how do we shift that? And I think that's really a big discussion. There's a lot of discussion around ESG at the moment, but again, and that's where, I mean, to me, we're pushing a big discussion in Africa is, do we have our own definition of success in Africa that might be different from the issues that we have about continual growth as it's been fed by the West and by all the KPIs or KPAs that we have in the economic world? So in Africa, can we actually reframe what we mean by success in a much more sustainable way?
Fantastic, thank you. Thank you. So what we'd love to do, and I'd like to just sort of stop for a second and take a little bit of a poll. Welcome, Chakri, just to find out. We would love to have a space for everybody to bring some thinking to this in quite an intimate space, so that each person has an opportunity to bring what they feel and think. not from a space of expertise. So not from a space of I know, or even sometimes I've thought about this a ton, but from out of what we are hearing, what are the things that that might be possible for ourselves where we are, because thinking kind of far away or at a level that's not one upon which we have influence can make this feel very distracted from our day-to-day lived reality. But what are the ways in which we could think about the issue of climate, how it impacts on learning and teaching? What are the things that we need to learn, maybe relearn, maybe recover from our historic heritage that we've lost? How do we need to shift thinking? What becomes possible in our space that we can impact? And for some of you, that space is Mohammed's or Marie's. And for others of us, it's home. But just to have an opportunity for each of us to be able to think through that together. So I want to check, it's a relatively small group that we have. So we could just stay here, or we can break into 3 or 4 rooms where there's space for more engagement. Would you like to just pop your hands up as to what if you feel that you would be quite keen to break into smaller breakaway discussions? That's what we had planned, but I just want to check with the group that everybody will feel comfortable and happy with that. So if you're keen for us to move into some smaller discussions, have some more intense discussion, and then come back and bring that thinking back into the room together, just pop your hand up. Okay, so not seeing any hands up. Lily, you are keen. Anybody else keen? You have to use the little function, otherwise I can't see it. If it's going up behind your blank screen, I can see your hand.
I think this conversation in the chat is becoming rich. Maybe it could be useful for us to stay in this group itself.
Then we just need to know that that's the request, is to bring your thinking. And it doesn't matter if you think your thinking is high level, clever thinking, or just, actually for me, this is what I feel. So really, we would like to hear everybody's voices and like to hear your opinion and thinking. And we normally do that by breaking away into small groups, but it is a very rich conversation here. So what I'd love for us to think about is, let's do a little bit of a what do you think? Not game, but a little bit of a model. What do you think? So bring your thinking, put your hand up if you have something to share. I'm going to put a slide up now for us to think through. And then when you are done, if somebody else's hand is up, can you pass to them and use the phrase, what do you think? So Neil, if you've started and you see Michael's hand is up, just hand over you to him. Michael, what do you think? Okay, so that we can keep a little bit of a flow and really get, and if nobody's hand is up, select somebody so that we can really hear everybody's thoughts and perspective coming through. So let me just share here again. Okay, so we've had that discussion. So just to bring us down into the topic a bit more, to really think about this juxtaposition between the climate issues that we are facing on the continent and what relevance they have both to what we need to learn. What we need to learn. What are we learning? So what are we actually learning in the moment of experiencing these things and of witnessing them in other parts of our continent? Because I think we are all inundated with the massive climate catastrophes that we are seeing across the continent, obviously globally, but for today, thinking about our continent, what are we learning? What do we need to learn? And how do we go about that? How do we go about learning these things and teaching them? So if we can look at those just keep those in our minds for this next segment of discussions. And please, anybody who would like to just kick us off on this. Thank you, Fiston.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, Mr.
All
We can hear
right.
you.
What I do is when I'm speaking, I'd love to keep good bandwidth. I'll be speaking off video, if you don't mind. My experience, my sharing would be a little bit taking us a bit back on the topic, the theme. What we're talking about is learning, climate change and learning. And I have a couple of questions that pop up to me, like what kind of learning, climate change, it's there. I attended a conference and a guy in this conference stood and say, well, as long as we as Africans have not yet understood or learned these concepts in our own context, in our own mother tongue, it's going to be so hard to go about them, creating solutions about climate change. Does my mama know about climate change? You realize this is the woman that burns tires to get money to feed, her family. One of the biggest and the selling businesses in Congo is there's a kind of bamboo trees that's getting sold from Congo to Uganda. My dad or this old man will never stop cutting them down as long as that's paying him. That's giving him money, right? And I don't even think that he cares about climate change. I don't even know whether he knows about climate change, because if he knew, he would find other alternatives to feed the family and not cutting down trees without planting them. Sure. Even as we talk about policies, Andrew, I loved your your writing. You quoted one of Marie's saying, but with policies, I would love to challenge us with questions like, what are these policies for how long have they existed? What has been the impact? Generally, these are policies that are being designed to keep us in the dark, on us keeping us out of the truth. It's technically clear, like in my country, if you go with speaking the truth or talking about the policies and how that are affecting people on the ground, you be the enemy of the government, you be the enemy of the people in power. These are the things we need to talk about, right? And this brings me back to a guy that wants to invest in a climate project in Congo. What's the implications of a personal interest in investing into this kind of, projects versus why the project should be done so that it helps people on the ground, And I so much like the idea of framing this into the educational context. Well, I don't believe that should be the only solution, because education, that's only a 2080 system. I would count very few of people are educated in Congo, and so many are not educated. So to me, maybe it's time to rethink of education, learning how to relearn these terms and concepts so that we understand them, like in my own local way, what education means. And of course, adaptation, that's one of the key, right? We're not going to change this world or this Africa to the way it's been maybe 20 years ago. We need to create ways, and I think we are creating ways in which we want to adapt to the new system. Somehow not only fighting, but creating other alternatives to the problems that are rising. Now technology is influencing the world, and we're not going to end this. We're not going to put this down. We need to create alternatives. I think that's what I would love to bring us back to, is really going back to say, well, maybe not education only, maybe by talking about learning, maybe finding more ways and supporting more local ways of learning these concepts and putting them into actions. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Fisson. What do you think, Lily?
Thank you very much, Fiston, for your comments, because they just triggered some thoughts that I just heard, and one of those was, how can we then redefine learning? Should it be education through the school system, or should we look at it from folklore and the way Africans used to learn prior to the formal education system? How do we redefine, and this is something Marie spoke about earlier, how do we redefine wealth in the African context? Is development having the skyscrapers, or is development being able to meet your family's needs, your resources? What exactly is development? Is it having money in the bank, or is it having a herd of cows that you can adequately take care of and you can feed from those cows? But then the dichotomy of all this comes in with the issue about the world is ever changing. We are moving in a space where there's technology today. We are moving in a space where things are different. So I think we need to get a balance between the two. How do we train our people not only to plant trees for their use today, but for posterity? And how can these trees be trees that will be useful not only today, but also tomorrow? Somebody had mentioned around, I think it was Lobashi, had that name. I'm sorry if I've murdered it, Loboshi, about planting a fruit tree in every home. Probably I'll go to planting maybe 10 or 20 or 30 fruit trees, because then that would allow the family to sell part of the produce, or to start a homegrown industry within the village where all the fruits can then be processed and sold into the cities so that they can make extra money. Apart from sustaining the environment, they'll also be able to make some income, and they'll be able to be more self-sustaining as a community. So it's looking at solutions that are not for here and now, but also for the future as well. And also helping children understand, why do we want those trees planted in the first place? And considering the world we are in today, I cannot just rubbish out the effect of what the Western world has brought into our countries. We can't. That is the trajectory that most of our countries have already taken. Every university graduate would like to have a good house, a good car, and take their, once they have their family, take them to the best schools in the system. So that's the trajectory, and we cannot say, okay, let's stop that and go backwards. No. But how can we go in the same trajectory, probably even in a faster speed, but with a more conscious effort to protect the environment in which we are in? So having this environment, knowing that, teaching our children that the environment is good and needs to be protected, and whatever we do to this environment will have repercussions on us in the future. Not only, and yeah, as it stated, I mean, Africa did not get to where it is alone. It was a global effort to bring Africa to its knees. Getting Africa out of the continent where it is right now will require support from the global world. And this is something, again, we should not put under the carpet. It is a fact that for Africa to get out of the strains and the constraints that it's now feeling, it's going to take a lot of help. It's going to need a lot of support. Much as we can do in terms of, yes, I can have educate my community, we can start ensuring that our ground cover is well protected. But then, as somebody also mentioned earlier, food is a crisis. We already reached a point where we've got a food crisis. We need food. So somebody will have to think about how do I get that food? Where do I get the space to plant that food? Or where do I get resources to buy that food? And because food is a crisis, we cannot rely on food aid, whether it's from our government or from external governments. Food needs to be produced by the community themselves so that it's a dignified source of livelihood. When you're queuing up for food, your humanity is being attacked. And it's not right that we should have our people queuing for food, either from the government or from whichever. It just degrades their humanity. We need to help them be able to have a sustainable livelihood. So teaching that from a very young age, all through, the dignity of being able to produce your own food, the dignity of being able to sustain your family, the dignity of being able to multiply wealth from the resources that you have. So we need to teach this at a very young age, and we need to teach it all through our societies, but also bring in technology to come up with this small industries in the communities, give opportunities for them to be able to market their produce, to repackage their produce and make it neat and market it to external countries so that they can benefit from it. So what do you think, Mohammed?
Yes, I think building on what Lily said before, and reminding everyone, and myself, even myself, just saying that I joined this group and I responded to this webinar because the title was Education and Climate. So please, we need to have a whole look to every part of this issue of climate, but we need to concentrate on the agenda or the item education. Yes, we are aware of the others. We should know the background and so on, the situation, but we need to concentrate on that. And I think education is the climate agenda or the climate chapter or the climate book within the education. We need to have this chapter. And it's so to get people ready to, if we are whatever level we are, because when I see education, I don't see only kids or young people. So I see the whole spectrum. Even my grandmother needs to be educated now, and I do it in a way. And so education at all levels. We can concentrate on one specific level because we have the expertise there and so on. Okay, but education in all the age. So we educate, we sensitize, so people can at least understand what is happening first. The second, get ready to be less victim of what is happening. I know that there is, I know the flood, how it comes. And so if I listen to somewhere, to the radio or to another, that flood is coming, so at least I will be out of the way instead of being caught in the system and being another victim. So something like that. This education would understand the subject, how it comes, where I can get the support or the information and so on, at least not to be the first victim, which is the first, excuse me, which is the first thing. So it is how I see it. That is why I said extreme weather event, climate, floods, drought, and so on, have been part of our life for very long. So let us see if they have increased in frequency. Okay, that we can learn about that. But what people in the different regions in Africa have done about that? Something like that. So, and when we have done that, we can see how we can scale that, upscale that, to pass this message through this group or another medium, anyway, just pass the message to, look, in Niger, they do it that way. In Uganda, they will do it that way. In South Africa, they do it that way. The only thing is what I can say as climate change is if we had one flood once a year before the year 2000, now we expect that we might have 3 floods, something like that. So it is what we are learning. So, but we already had a flood. Anyway, I remember from my first years, we had a flood, we had the desert locust invasion, we had a drought, and so we tried to manage this way. Now we need to pass the message a bit wider and see, because these phenomena instead of going down, is going to go up in frequency and severity. So we need to know that. And the role of education is very important. If we have not the possibility to educate the aged people or the way, and we could start with the young people, they will pass the message to home. They will pass the message to their families who are illiterate or something like that. But so we concentrate on a group. We are going to see together. We will concentrate on this group and start the first climate course or the climate sensitization or education to be able to say, look, we have this type of situation, but we had this type of solution. Let's see how we can update that. Over. And I would like, I think Fiston wanted to say something. Let me pass the message to Fiston directly.
And after that, Fiston, you're going to choose somebody for us whose voice we are longing to hear. So you may choose. Fiston.
Am I the one with the mic now?
Sure.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mohammed. There is just something that came in me when I was going through the chat, and I looked at Chakri's message that talks about understanding who we are, you know, and exploring our shadows from history, colonial or otherwise. I'm still very, very obsessed with the fact that we haven't understood concepts as, you know, they're being propagated or they're being taught. I think it's really, really important that we understand what something really means in our own local, you know, or vulnerable context, so we know how to act upon it. You know, now there has been, for example, there has been lots of COPs, like COPs 27, COPs 26, COPs 25, whatever. And the question to me has been, what did these COPs create so far? What impact has this had? Apart from being in luxurious hotels, you know, in big halls flowing with chocolates, what has been, you know, the biggest positive impact on the community level? You know, secondly, you might know this already. There has been so many forums that to me are they now confusing the young generations. This is where we are going astray. Someone calls themselves a change maker because they think they're so international. They speak in forums, they meet people, and we call that change. Like they're not really like spending more time in offices, more time boarding planes and flying abroad. And we call that, you know, creating change, you know, while people are perishing here with ways of finding ways to create, you know, electricity, for example, you know, finding ways to create energy, you know. And I want to quote what Lily really said. I think it's really, really important that as we imagine the change that we want to create, let's look at the generations behind us. Now, I'll bring this. It sounds funny. I am very afraid to have my own children because I don't want them to live the kind of life that I'm living now, a life full of confusions. You know, there's a lot to talk. Can I just ask if we would love to keep this topic, you know, very active after the dialogue?
So. Absolutely.
And, all right. And I want to choose. I'm going to choose, right? Pass the baton to Refrain. Do you want to say something?
Refrain?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Fiston. I think you are doing well on all your ways there. Actually, I was also expecting that when Robin said that, Fiston, you are going to choose someone to pass. And I was like, yeah, Fiston is going to choose me because um, I'm coming from a meeting. Then I even joined the call when I was in the meeting. We had a meeting here of all the CBOs of Nakivale. Then, so I was attending the meeting while I wasn't stable. So I didn't even have the summary of the meeting, but at least I can have something to share because I'm now reaching at home already. This topic of climate change, what I may say, it's all about that people do not really think of what will happen for this second. I may say 2040 or 2050. As we are now undergoing the climate change today, now we should have also be thinking of what's the solutions that we may take so that they can start react, not today, but after spending some years. Like for instance, I may say we have some forests in Africa. I may say, especially in DRC, I can see this equatorial forests. I may see also different parts where we have trees and what. If only we start planting some trees during this period, it means that the effect of those trees that we are going to plant will not be seen right now, but after spending some years. And also about what Fiston said, we are going to see now people they have now started taking this like a deal, So they only think like if they start initiating these activities of climate change, then they will start earning much money, while other population is other people are suffering, like in DRC. I don't really understand how is DRC also earning something from the contribution that is also providing to this. And I can also see the way that people still look for how they can protect those forests. Others, I may say this country, I may say Uganda, and also in other parts of Rwanda, we can see them going in jealousy and cut down some trees, while we are looking for how to protect those trees, but these people start cutting them down and bring them in their countries and build something great, and they earn much money, while the population in DRC is not even gaining anything from it. And I can also say this COP 16, was it 16? I don't really remember well. It was in 2016. Then they launched this campaign of climate change, and we realized that the most contributors of these activities, I may say those countries that have big parts of forests, and they are the first losers. I don't know if this same case is also happening for example, for America, where we have also the Amazon, and we have also different parties of where we can find different places. They have many trees there. We are only looking for how we can be making these countries suffering, while doing we don't even mind about this the pollution, how the activities of human being is also affecting all the earth. We are using much these devices, I may say, the cars and all those devices that use the petrol. So if we only try to see the way that they are polluting the earth, it's a little bit hard to stop them from working. So we should be now investing into this young generation, showing them the importance of protecting our earth. And I think this new generation will be also living in the space where not these young people have destroyed the world, but the people who lived before them will be the one who didn't even leave the great legacy for them. So we should start from today. I may stop by there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rufin. Absolutely, and I do think that is the awareness level. So my generation, I think our awareness is very low. The generation in their teens and preteens now, their awareness is extremely high. And let's hope that does translate into committed action. But we can't afford to wait. We need to educate ourselves. So Winfred, you had your hand up. Lwaboshi, I would love to hear your perspective as well. Hello, sweetie. I'd love to hear from your perspective because I know there's a lot of work going on the ground from your organization and others. And I think landing this into what can we do here, not what can they do over there, is quite important. So Winfred, if we can hear from you, Lwaboshi, Maria, I saw your hand was up, but Jamila and Zoe and Savannah, Neil, we would love to hear from you too. Yeah, so let's hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Madam Robin. I really had and followed how the discussions were really pushed on. And as it comes to talk about the learning and education here, I will support the idea of Fiston because it really it side with our reality on the ground here. First, I will talk about first the concept. Secondly, education and how the interconnection between this concept and education as our community or community members perceive them. So here, firstly, yes, we can just talk about education in setting some of the climate programs in our national curriculums and so on. But yet, these women and some peasants from on the ground that don't understand this concept about climate change. They don't know what it is. They only experience maybe the consequences, and then they say, okay, there was a heavy rain, so damage, you see, and so on. But firstly, we should have some actions on education, yes, but targeting also some of the peasants, some of the women on the ground, so that they may understand deeply, what the climate change is and how does it impact on the community, and how they can just involve, in different actions aiming at protecting our environment. That was my first reaction. And also, as far as the education, I mean the formal education just concerned, okay, it is really very important to make some advocacy to meet with some policemakers and see whether policemakers, or yes, of course, or also the, the Ministry of Education, and see whether they can just reshape, because some chapters about protection of the environment are shaped in the national curriculum, but do they teach those matters properly to children? That's also another matter. Does the minister in charge of environment do a follow-up, a close follow-up in different schools to make sure where the children are learning about climate change and how they can just protect their environment? That's another question. So we have a lot of questions to do here, and to make all this happen, we could start by what Mr. Mohammed said, to raise awareness on climate change, to start by raising awareness so that the community may be aware of the climate change and how it can just have a positive or negative impact on our communities. And also on the ground, even I usually share this in different meetings of organizations, how this the matter of climate change can be seen as a cross-cutting issue. And when it comes to implement a given project, even that project is not focusing on the environment, but yet they can just have some package, 2 or 3 activities based on environment protection or climate change. So on the local level, I think with these 3 things that I am talking about, we can see how to protect our communities, our land, and see after the population has been sensitized on how to protect the land, on how to protect the community, we can then come with trees, plants, and sharing them to different populations, and tell them how they will be taking care of those plants in their compound by foreseeing the protection of the destruction of the environment in the future. That's what I would like to share with the participants about regarding the learning and education. Thank you. I may come back once I get something else to add. Thank you, Madam Robin.
Thank you, Lwaboshi. Melchizedek, is there anything that you would like to add, or any thoughts that you have? Boniface, anybody whose voice we haven't yet heard? Silvana,
hello.
Neil, yes,
Good
Melchizedek.
evening.
Hi.
Thank you, Dr. Robin, for the opportunity. My network has been disturbing, but then reading from the chat, I was very glad when you were talking about the education. Most of the times when we talk about education, people focus more on the classroom-based education. But as far as climate change is concerned, one thing I have seen practically that I think it is helping is whereby people have either a quarterly or a yearly sort of tree planting. Let me put that for example. So in Ghana, for instance, some religious organizations have kind of thing they call an environmental day or environmental time, where they do tree planting. And the country also have what they call the Green Day, where they set a time for the Forestry Commission to do some nursery, the tree nursery, where at the Green Day they share it among any organization or all regions where the planting is being done. I think when those initiatives are being echoed more, I believe that with time it can help solve the climate change problems. So that's what I wanted to also echo in, so that other countries can also emulate that. Thank you.
Absolutely, and thank you, Melchizedek. And that actually references back to something that I'd spoken about in the chat earlier, where you know, these are the kinds of community awarenesses. So they might not be called climate change awareness, but they require a local championship and the preservation of a culture of a community where from generation intergenerationally communities are able to practice, or nations are able to practice ceremonial activities that really are restorative for nature. And Andrew, it makes me think about you going back home and planting trees every time you go back to your local, your local community of origin. And these kinds of habits
Dr.
of
Robin,
community.
to even add up,
Carry on,
hello.
Melchizedek. Carry on.
Yeah, sorry. To add up, I think in my own small way, as of last year, I registered a hub that as part of our activities, we decided that every year we'll be doing that sort of a tree planting as part of the Green Day activities for the hub. It's an entrepreneurship development hub we call the Legends Hub. So that is one of the activities we'll be doing, that we'll be sharing updates on the AVD page.
Wow.
Fantastic.
Wow.
Love that.
That is beautiful.
Love
that is beautiful. Yeah, Robin, you have reminded me, and you have posted in the chat that you need to be practical. You know what to do. There is that expressed in the classroom, and then now there are practical lessons, as you have said it. Also, Melchizedek has also talked about that. And just to reinforce on what you have said, I am not one of the guys who take lead when it comes to planting of trees. Every rainy season, I have to ensure that I plant at least 200 trees, And it is part of my life. I love trees. I love nature. I love green environment. And when I move around areas which have been worstly hit or which have been hardly hit by climate change, my heart bleeds. I feel sorry because I cannot do anything in such a big magnitude. But now in such a conversation like this, we can play a role in our own way. And Lily talked, a few minutes ago, Lily talked about clearing of environments to come up with the skyscrapers, simply because we have seen other countries doing it. And the question is it really necessary to have those skyscrapers and ruin our mother nature, ruin our forests, ruin our environment? We have seen wildfires in quite a number of countries. We have seen them in Australia. We have witnessed the wildfires in the Amazon, and even in Africa, and particularly in Kenya, where I live. Many of these wildfires actually are artificial. They are not natural. They are artificial because people want to react because of the challenges which they are facing. They want to be given some land or to clear some forests to practice agriculture. But they may get food today. They may get their small amounts of food today. But is it sustainable again? Those are some of the questions which we should always be asking ourselves. So I'm really, really enjoying the conversation and seeing how we can really be practical and walk the talk. Yes, Loboshi. Loboshi is raising his hand. But Loboshi.
Yes.
Yes, Loboshi.
Yeah. I would like you to finish first before I intervene, because there is I would like to intervene to what there is someone from Uganda who talked about cutting trees, bringing them to Uganda. I would like to intervene. Those trees coming from Congo, I'd like to intervene, but after you have finished. Thank you.
No, continue, Loboshi. I'm finished. Continue.
Okay, thank you. Someone talked about cutting trees in Congo, taking them to Uganda and so on. As we said when we opened the negative impact on the climate change, just because someone living in a given village where he doesn't have any job, so and he relies on tree exploitation so that he can just find something to eat. So also in our side, yes, of course, the government has also a little responsibility on that. That's because we most of the population, I mean, even 70% of Congolese people do not have jobs. So more each person has recourse to his own way to find out some of to get the means of maybe the living. What would I say? To get something to eat, to get money, and respond to some basic needs of the household. So this is the reasons. The reasons why these are the reasons why you will find some of the people from different villages, especially in really remote areas, people cutting trees in disorder. But in my context here in Uvira, especially even all the South Kivu, you cannot cut a tree without a prior authorization from the environment office. You cannot unless you are jailed. If you dare to cut a tree, you must be jailed. So before cutting a tree, you have to plant 1 or 3. So and that limit rate of deforestation here on the ground, but yet the measure has been taken after almost all the trees have been cut down. So that's what I would like to say about what my friend from Uganda talked about cutting trees here. And also he raised the point of some people have seen these matters of climate change as a deal. They intend just to earn money. Yes, of course, in everything that we are doing, first of all, we have to respect some humanitarian principles. And as for me here, concerning to what he said, I would like to talk about humanity. If you don't have that spirit of humanism in you, working in these humanitarian contexts for you is not really a better place where you can just play a role. But because here in humanitarian area, it is evocation. Yourself, you are thinking the way you protect yourself. You think about how you can just protect the community, your neighbor, and someone else. It is in that way, in that perspective, that we can just build a sustainable community where all our efforts pulled together to produce a positive change in our communities. But if among us, some are intending to make some actions or to join different discussion groups, to join different conference meetings, to join different events in a way or a perspective to get money is not an end. What we need first is a change, a positive change in our communities, because you can get that money, but tomorrow you miss the place where you can just use it for the benefit of your family. That's why this matter is really very crucial. And as for my community, really the climate change is an important matter on which all of our efforts are on. And with our effort plus some of the effort coming from different colleagues, different friends, different donors, we are going to fight against the climate change on the ground. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Loaboshi. Winfred, you've had your hand up before, you've had your hand up for ages, so we'd love to hear your perspective. And then Marie, also some time ago, you had your hand up, and I'm just going to position first so that as you go in to your piece, we start to just think about, so we've thought about how, well, we've been discussing, how do we learn from, bring into our learning the issues around climate, and not education, communal learning about how to deal with these issues. And really, if we can start to think about how do we then bring that learning into decision-making spaces. So how do we translate lived experience a little bit more tightly back into decision-making places, policy-making spaces? So let's go Winfried, Rashid, Silvana, and then back to you, Marie.
Thanks a lot, Robin. I think building on to what Mohammed had said before he fell off, when we're discussing education and climate change, personally, I think I would more or less redefine education so that it does not apply to me standing in front of my class and teaching them a concept in the subject area that I teach, but more like me sitting down with my grandmother and understanding how she managed to actually take care of crops during the dry seasons. This is not the first time we're having a dry season. Dry seasons have been with us all along. That's why we have deserts. We had communities living in those deserts before, right? How did they live safely then that it's not doable now? What changed? Because the place is still dry, right? They had food before. Why do they not have food now? That sort of education, I think, as far as climate change, is where we first have to start. Let us go back to our original, traditional, indigenous ways of doing things. Once we understand what that is, even as we sit down as policymakers, and I say we are policymakers because in our very small ways, whether you're dealing with 500 students in a school, or you're dealing with 100 kids in a lecture room, or you are sitting down in a policy position in African Union, Kenyan government, Ugandan government, whatever, we are all policymakers one way or the other. So how is it that we're going to bring in this indigenous knowledge so that one way or the other? I was in a conference before where they were talking about these women in India who are doing their lentils in the indigenous ways, the crop rotations, and they no longer have to use fertilizers. They no longer have to use insecticides, right? Because again, that is something we are not talking about. How do they affect the crop that we have? So when we talk about climate change and education, excuse me, when we discuss climate change and education, I want to pause as an educator and stop thinking about developing a curriculum that is me, the teacher, standing in front of a classroom, but more like going back to the older generation, picking that native knowledge that they have that is very African, but quote unquote is not developed, is not civilized, is not, let me use all those other words, right, that we're going to use there. But it worked for us for ages. So how do we bring it back now here so that it works for us here now? If we're going to COP27 as an indigenous person, how do I bring my community way of doing things and get people to listen to me as an indigenous person, right? Because it worked before. So I live in Laikipia. There were problems in Laikipia before colonization, during colonization, after colonization, of dryness, of aridness. This is an arid area. How did the colonizers at that time, manage to keep their kettle okay? Why is it not working now? What changed? Because the amount of rainfall has more or less been the same. So I think as educators, we need to reset. I call it hitting the reset button. We need to hit the reset button and go back there first. That document Mohammed was talking about, having a one-page document, I would want to see it borrowing a lot of our indigenous stuff. Again, sharing this knowledge across communities in our countries, communities in our region, communities across the continent as well. Thank you.
Oh, hallelujah. This is the thing, this is all intimately entwined. So heritage and equity, understanding the value of our elders, understanding the value of community learning and transmission of community learning, and really pausing and thinking about how do we reintegrate that? How do we do that? And how do we start now where we are? So Winifred, in your position, doing that, you know, the kind of teachers who've actually taken that initiative and invited learners to go and find the oldest person in their community and ask them to tell them their story and ask them questions. What does that reignite for that young child, for that community, in terms of how they view the sources of learning?
That has been...
Yeah?
Oh, sorry. I did actually try this. This is something that I tried in a previous station I was in. And honestly, the results that the kids will come back with are amazing. We have so much knowledge that is definitely not referred to as education anymore, you know, because it's too old-fashioned, for lack of a better word. But it worked, and it was saving a lot. And so we have this small sample gardens where they're trying it out, and it's working really well for them. Yeah, using the really old technologies, if we can call them technologies.
Yep, amazing. So Rashid, and then Marie, if we can ask you to come back and pull us back into, so how do we take this and transmit learning, not only horizontally, but vertically backwards into decision making? Rashid.
Yes, thank you so much, Robin. And thank you, everyone, for the wonderful submissions. Surely, I'm very, 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 very inspired with the submissions of the previous speakers. Surely, my concern is when you look at the education, I want to take this today. I want to relate it to the teachers. We find that many teachers are money makers. We find that many teachers are money makers. So the instance of teaching, they are only teaching because they have to teach. But would want to see people who are passionate. Someone talked about the issue of humanity. Someone to teach something that each and every student, when he goes back home, he or she can be given a chance to practice. The issue of climate change, I would think one of the recommendations I would give is we need to emerge together, and we have a sensitization program in especially schools and other communities that are many more affected. Because if we emerge together and unite for the cause of just climate change, especially in slum areas and also in schools, because yes, schools are teaching, yes, schools are talking about climate change, but is it making an impact, or learners are just taking it as an issue or as a topic or as something that they have to learn? So my concern, I would think we need to find that alternative way how we can do the sensitization in most of the schools and also other areas. As also we put the eye on the stakeholders, the environment protectors, the protection authorities, the policy makers, and also we need to find the best alternative on reaching to grounds, because now in Uganda, what is affecting us, it's just floods and the cutting down of trees, the planting of trees that do not bring some better result to our community or to our environment. That is my submission, and I hereby appreciate the team, especially Robin, for organizing this, and the team. Thank you so much for God and my country.
Thank you, Rashid.
Robin, if you don't mind, just would like to say a few things about education again. And I've seen that Neil talks about the fact that sometimes schools teach things that are not practical or not helpful, or sometimes we go through the socialization process through which the learners might just, go with the flow and accept the status quo, or just believe that there is nothing to do, or there is nothing that can be done. What we need to focus on at schools is first ownership, making everyone feel that we are the owners of this world together. I mean, the universe is ours. It's ours, all of us. It's not somebody else's. So we are going to live in it, and our kids are going to live in it, and future generations are going to live in it. And we see that today in research. And most of times we're talking about, instead of sustainable development, we're talking about regeneration. And I've heard a lot of people talking about planting trees and taking care of the environment. And the best way is to rethink how our ancestors used to that intelligence they used to have in dealing with the environment, especially in Africa. If we have that African perspective about Africans, how Africans of the past used to treat the environment and how they used to interact with it. And the second thing that probably should be part of the curriculum is engagement, but engagement from a different perspective. As I said, for example, teaching people about legal issues and how they can use the law for in their own favor in order to stand and speak up and defend their own environments. And that's why I said it's ownership first. So we own this environment. So once we see that something wrong is happening to it, we need to defend it. We are all lawyers somehow. So that's the part that I talked about when I mentioned conflict. And I said that conflict is positive because it's through pushing that we can survive in this world. Yeah. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Aziz. Thank you, Winfred. Before Marie, before we hand over to you, may I just ask Tulisile if you would like to add anything? Jamila also, and Jin. So Tulisile, any thoughts?
I think Jin is struggling with the
connectivity.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, Boniface, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, can you hear me?
It's choppy, but we can. Let's try.
Actually, I'm in a place where there is no enough network. Sorry for joining you late. My submission was around the approach. Sometimes we tend to use one approach fits all. There are some places where you find the community probably they have no any other option apart from using, let's say, wood fuel. But there are some also other places where you find they have alternatives to use instead of using wood fuel. But you find the other ones that have alternatives, they don't have information concerning their available alternatives or other ways of protecting the environment. And you find the other ones who have no any other alternatives, they also lack things that or knowledge of how to use alternatives that may be available in the community to make sure that they protect the environment. And another thing, there is also a challenge to find the agencies are not doing their work, for instance. And a good example, there is currently there is a challenge in Nachivare. There is the increase in the water levels of Lake Nachivare. But just of recent, we had a meeting, and I asked them what it caused. I'm telling you, there were very many experts concerning environment, but answers they were giving, for sure, a person can't just go there and they just say, maybe I've reached a conclusion that this is the cause of this. I remember I was asking if it is or about maybe citation, but they were not really specific. They were like, that question needs research, and it has been there for so long, and one has ever taken probably to find out what so, the agencies should take their responsibilities and find out what could be the problem in terms of climatic change, and so reaching out to the community and maybe create awareness and give alternatives how to protect the environment, for instance. So that is what I can share, probably because I reached it, and yeah, surely that is what I had to submit. Thank you.
Thank you, Boniface. Thank you. Sorry, it was a little bit choppy, but I think we kind of got quite a bit there. Silvana, and then Silvana, if you could please hand over to Marie.
Okay, so one of the things that I wanted just to talk about is that I'm currently in Morocco, and last week with Karima, we went to visit this beautiful school in Saleh, which is by Rabat, and it's part of the public school system. And the focus is on the ecology and environment, starting with the young children, the very young children. So throughout the school, they have gardens that the children tend to. So like they're making it not just this is teaching about it, but they're living it. So they're planting gardens and flowers, yes, but also some herbs and some vegetables that then they can use. They also use recycling products to make things throughout the school, including like this cute little cafe with a little table and chairs that you can actually sit on. So it's very much, the environment is very much part of their focus. Now, what they need to do, and as we discussed, is they need to move it into the older grades, right? So right now they're doing this with the 4- and 5-year-olds. The older grades are learning about the environment, but there's still that very much traditional approach to the pencil and paper activities. And what would be really nice to see is a school like that, where you have the director of the school and the teachers working so well together, understanding children, understanding learning, understanding the importance of the environment. How do you then move that into the older grades so that it's not lost and that it continues? Because when we have our young children become the change makers and the stewards of the environment, then that will make a difference, because they will not let things go on as they are, knowing that it will affect their lives. So, and then if I can also add something else that I put in the chat about picture books, because the picture books are very simple, they're simple language without coming down too hard, but clearly demonstrate the importance of a one topic. Like there's a book on water, how important water is, and that, you know, we don't want to lose access to fresh water. And I can't remember the title of this one book that I have is one of my favorites, but I can't remember the title right now. And it's about a little boy and his grandfather who go on a boat and who regularly go fishing through the rainforest. And it has the pictures of the old rainforest. But each picture has a backdrop, as the book goes on, of less and less of the forest. So showing at one time what the rainforest was like, and then showing what happens when you cut down all the trees in the rainforest to make hotels and buildings, so that at the end what you see is not the rainforest, but you see buildings, hotels, and then the question then is, will I ever go fishing with my grandfather again, right? So it just demonstrates so profoundly the changes that are happening. And those type of books then don't necessarily have to be just in school, but shared with the family. And so important what others have said about listening to the elders and helping them. And then there's that conversation, the real conversation, real authentic task that needs to be the center part of education. Okay, that's what I have to say.
Thank you. So Marie, back to you.
Let me check first if you can hear me. Can you hear me well? Okay, it's clear.
Yes, we can hear you.
It's quite difficult. It's quite difficult to come after everyone. There's so much, and it's such a rich dialogue. But I think I want to reflect on two things, Robin, and which is linked to the learning and the teaching around climate change, and also in what does that mean with our policymaker in that context. And I think one thing that's coming to my mind when I'm hearing people in this group is teaching or learning about climate change is one thing. I think what is important is also going beyond what is climate change and how to adapt to it, but what are the systemic root cause of climate change? Because I think it's really important to understand how did we got here? What is causing it? And then the second point, as I'm learning and I've been questioning, are we teaching climate change? Are we learning? What is that approach that's really going to, in a way, shift our consciousness and the consciousness of people? Because I think it's really, to really address climate change, it's really about shifting our consciousness. And so I'm thinking, how do we take an approach which is something for policymakers to really enable them to have transformative policy? Is we need to find a way to change the way they feel, to change the way they relate to reality, to change in a way you need to change the way they see the world, and where do they put themselves? So how can we relate to another person reality? And I think what I've learned through my career, and that's what we do with our company, you know, it's about shifting culture. It's not just about data and knowledge that you reach that change, that transformative impact. There is a third element, and we heard about it. It's about humanity. It's about shifting something in the way that we think and the way that we feel. And to me, is how do we do that from an early age? And I think the practical approach is very important, but how do we bring that level of consciousness? And if you ask to any CEO that is really pushing for transformative impact, they have had an internal journey of consciousness. It has changed the way they see the world. It has changed the way they see themselves in the world. And I'm just wondering how we take a more holistic approach to the learning, that it's not just about climate change. And the last thing I would like to, and why I want to finish on this point is, as Robin knows, we've crossed 19 countries to check in with humanity, and we ask 19 people in 19 countries what were their life lesson. And the one that really stuck with me came from a game ranger in Uganda, 2-meter-old big man that saw the war in South Sudan, that was protecting nature. And his life lesson to the world was, we just need to learn to love and trust, because then we don't want to hurt and we want to respect. And I just think that if you teach about climate change, or if you learn it, we have to take a more holistic approach. That's my view, is how do we bring that in a broader context, that we don't just talk about planting trees, great, but I want to challenge you that it go beyond. If we really want to take a system approach to climate change, it's all reflection about our humanity. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you. What a fantastic note to end on. And I think, yeah, again, bringing it back to the theory and moving from head into heart and will, and the facilitation of those experiences at every level, where we are. So the spaces where we are, and facilitating that up the chain and across. That's how change happens, not only because of what we think and know, but because of what we feel and experience. Laboshi, your hand is up. And then,
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Robin. I was really listening to Winfred and Madam Mary. Then I will react to their interventions. I found interesting. I'm sorry. I found interesting the reaction of Winfred when she talked about before colonization. What was the management of the climate change, and during the colonization, how were we managing the climate change, and after the colonization, with as for us during the colonization, when our colonizers came here, what they did to manage the climate change, and when they went back, how what they did was destructed, and consequently, we are observing, we are experiencing what we are experiencing today. Really, we can learn from what was done before colonization, what was done during colonization, and what was done after colonization. Did it have a negative impact on the climate change or a positive impact? So that if positive impact, we can just capitalize some of the elements which contribute to the maintenance of the environment. And if negative, we can root out those negative aspects and develop new strategies, having resource to the before colonization strategies and the during colonization strategies to maintain a safe environment. Madam also, to what Madam Mary said, she talked about how we can consider the root systematic causes of the climate change. Yes, of course, you know, globally, there are different, you know, causes are numerous. And if we take the example of in the industrialization countries, you know, we cannot tell them to stop producing cars, to stop polluting the air, because also today, you know, these big factories which produce cars and different product of good utility or of good utility in communities. We cannot tell them to stop, but what we can just do is to adapt, you know, to develop a resilience way to the climate change. Also, there are some causes that really are manageable. If you see, this is, for example, as for our community, the cause was the fact that most of the trees that were planted in the area were cut. Because when the colonizers came, they started planting trees almost everywhere, even all along the Lake Tanganyika. They plant some anti-erosion tree plants, I'm sorry, and they went to the mountain chain of Mitumba. They planted there in the town and all Uvira. They planted, but when they went back, what was done? So all the trees were cut, and also even if of the lake, I mean, fishermen, they started also burning some of the plants which were protecting the lake. So those are some of the root causes that are manageable. But also there are other causes.
Sorry, Luoboshi, your signal's gone. Luoboshi?
Factories, air pollution, you know, they are in that optic. Think there is only to develop an adaptation strategy. That's what I'll Winfred and Mary, also Madam Pardon? Yes, madam.
That's okay. Your signal is not great. Your signal's just very difficult to hear. So so if we can, Andrew, I don't know if you have any last thoughts, but perhaps what we could do is just come to a space where we can do a round just of thinking back, because we have covered two sort of big areas of thinking around climate and learning, and climate and decision making, and how to influence those two things at a very practical level positively. If we could do a round, there's a small group of us left. It would be really good, Jin and Tulisile and Zoe and Neil, just to hear your thoughts. And perhaps a good way to do that is for us to open up a thinking round on freshest thinking. What has struck you? What is something that you feel at a very practical level needs to be done and needs to happen? Before we go there, Andrew, is there anything that you would like to just think through?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Robin, and I really appreciate the participants for such a great insights, because we are so much concerned. What is coming to my mind is that we are so much concerned about our mother nature, because we are not moving towards the right direction. And it's like the bottom line of all the issues which we are facing are emanating from climate change. All the conflicts which we're experiencing, the food insecurity which we are experiencing, talk about all the conflicts and all that, they are emanating from climate change. And what is coming from our discussion today is that we need to have a clear policy structures which can influence mitigation against climate change. And it seems that the policies in many countries, from what I've heard, is that the policies may not be in existence. And if they are in existence, they are not effective. So there's a very big gap between the talk and the practice. And also something which is also coming out very strongly is a disregard of the conventional wisdom, which actually can play a big part. And the curriculum as well. And talking about the curriculum, I'll go back to what all of us have talked about. And of course, also supported with one of the quotes by President Kwame Nkrumah, who said that any nation with a sound base of economic development and a well-informed society will not be informed by a strong military. And the key word is the strength of any nation will not be informed by a strong military, but by a strong education system that is guided by articulate and elaborate curriculum. And talking about curriculum should be context-based, should not be, because the challenges which we are facing as a continent are different from the challenges in Australia, as in Europe, as in our South America and North America. And now when you come to a continent, you'll find that the challenges which Kenyans are facing are quite different from what South Africa is facing, from what Morocco is facing, from what other countries are facing. So we need to have a curriculum which is relevant, which is now going to answer some of these issues we have talked about. And again, we can talk about we are few in this session, but of course, our small efforts can mean a lot. From here, where do we go? Should we have a second dialogue about climate change? Because Roboshi and Maria have really guided us very well, and also the participants have come up with very strong insights. So from here, my suggestion is that we, maybe after 1 or 2 months again, we come now and continue from where we are living today, because climate change is a big thing which cannot just be exhausted by a single a dialogue. So it would be very crucial to have to have another session following this one, and to thank each and everyone. I really appreciate each and everyone. And Robin, we have not heard from Neil. We have seen him typing very great insights, but we'd like to hear also his views and insights as well as it concerns to climate change and land. So Neil, welcome.
Okay, can I add a comment then?
Yes,
yes. What I'm thinking, I live in a very fragile rural area in the very far northwest of Scotland, but these issues really relate to me. And we have things like food insecurity, poverty, marginal community in terms of environment, degradation, lots of issues. But I'm also an educationist. I've been an educator, primary school for so many years, and a head teacher. What I tried to do was to get the education system to be more and more real, and more based on connections in the local community. But then in the distant community, because we had IT, we always did a UNICEF project every February, for instance. Now, the next thing I'm wanting to say is that the centre is quite frightened of change, and it's also frightened of anything that's not rigid. So I feel that we need to give the centre, that is the administrators, what they want. And when I think about it, the more you make the curriculum interesting, the things that they seem to obsess about, which is reading, writing, and mathematics, can actually be met quite straightforwardly, but as long as you engage the children. And then it's engaging the children, as I feel, to become citizens much more than learners, which is, fun enough, was the paper that I gave in Chile where I met you for real, Andrew. And what I feel is that I really love what Silvana had to say. This works at the youngest age groups, sort of kindergarten, nursery, and the primary, but it can really work with older, as long as you start to empower the older ones with real tasks. And that can mean moving away from whole class lessons. And they can do really quite sophisticated things. And then you can build real agents of change in from your local community. And then it becomes something which is moving from beyond learning to the development of being, so that the children become confident individuals and responsible citizens, and then on to building knowledge, which is actually the philosophy of knowledge building, which I'm very interested in, which was developed first of all in Ontario. So what I'm thinking is education can change as long as the different bits of it all link up. And that also includes the centre. It does also include central administrators and central politicians, as long as we can broker the dialogues between the different parts of the system. And I think that's why I've become so involved. That's why, in a funny way, I'm involved with this community now for the last 2.5, or is it nearly 3 years now, and see so many links. Because I mean, where I am, it's actually, as I said in the chat, it's cool, it's wet, remote and rural, but there's so many challenges where something can happen that make us vulnerable. So it's really about vulnerability and adaptivity and building resilience to whatever the natural world might throw at us, which of course also includes climate change. So that's just my little start, since I've been quiet the whole of this seminar so far, which I'm really enjoying. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Neil, for such a great insights. And of course, you can experience it in as much as you're in Scotland. Of course, it's quite cold there, but you can feel it. You can feel the effects of climate change. So thank you, really appreciate. Dulisile Mazia, a word. Maybe you can hear from Dulisile Mazia. Mazia, you are muted. If maybe we go to Jean Tanaka. Tanaka, we can hear from. Can we hear from you, please? Yeah, Dulisile is back.
Okay, thank you very much for the session. Although I don't have much to say, but my concern is that it looks like climate change is inevitable and it affected almost to the whole world, like it is done even in Eswatini. But my own suggestion is that how about bringing together the policymakers in the deliberations where the climate change could be inculcated in the curriculum, started from grassroots level. So when school starts from the lower level up to the higher level, up to policymakers, stakeholders, and everybody be involved, so that we see like some of these exercises we do, like this the plastic pollution management that is being done. Some of these things are taken as games, as jokes, like they affect only the elite, while climate change looks like it's affecting everybody. So once it's inculcated in the policy, maybe part or most of the population could have been captured so that they are involved in fighting the climate change. That is what I can say for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Lucille. Tanaka, do you have something to contribute? Tanaka, are you there? Aha. Then Abdulaziz, what are your insights based on what we have heard today? Aziz?
Aziz is,
Aziz, you're
yeah, this is it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As Aziz is muted. Silvana, we heard from you, we had your insights, but now we are coming to the closure. What are 2-3 points which have emerged from our today's conversation?
Okay, so there's a lot of great ideas and know what to do, but I think it was Feaston at the beginning who said, yes, we know what to do, but he was talking about his mother and father and other people in the community that need to survive, right? So they may be doing things that maybe need to be changed, but in order for them to survive and have some money for their families, so there needs to be a way of not have to how do you think about what is good for the greater community when your own needs aren't being? So I think there's that pull and push that's there.
Yeah, thank you so much, Silvana. Mohammed, do you have the final word before we go?
Not the final word. The final word is the whole team. Huh? The final word is not from me in a way. Just very interested in what happened. The question is, I am coming back to, we did set this session, this working group or whatever, this community, education and climate. Let's not be the politician. Let's concentrate on this part of the mission. There is a whole puzzle. Let's do properly ours. And education, let's decide which group we are going to concentrate on, what sort of contribution and help we are going to give to this group, and how we, from there, get as much as possible done. Education, we set the group and we educate. And people being educated as someone said, I don't remember. So it is some, yes, it is near. So it can be environment, it can be climate change, it can be any change. Just how to go about that. Yes, climate change is a big issue, is a global issue. It can be, anyway, an example of working on making the change, and we target a group, anyway, a group from humanity, and we concentrate on that. At least we have achieved. If we do something, we have achieved at least one thing. If not, the climate change is very wide, very big, very political. There is many people doing business out of that. let's concentrate on education and an item. It seems to be climate. Put it change or variable or something. Climate, let's work on that and concentrate on that. I think that we will achieve something. And I could say that from this education group, we can touch many people, even the politician, or maybe from the kids that we are going to train. Tomorrow there will be many politicians in from there who will gain. So let's concentrate, and I think not to lose. If we come back in 2 months to start the same discussion, I'd say no. Personally, I'd say no. Let's take something from here. We have internet, we have the situation, disseminate it and start. And so each teacher or each member of this group would come back with solution, will come back with experience. Look, I did it that way in that place. What do you think about it? If it is good, Robin would spread it all over the world, something like that. If it is good, any one of us could spread it. So in summary, let's concentrate climate and education, concentrate on a group and start doing something, even if it is small, and from there it will grow. Over. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mohammed. I support you. From here, when we meet next time, we should come up with solutions. What have we done and what have we been doing since this session today? So what I've taken from you is educate, 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 and stop politicking. Let us walk the talk, and not tomorrow, but walking the talk today. Thank you for that. Boniface? Boniface, are you with us? Boniface, we are muted. Then we go to Melchizedek. Melchizedek, you are muted. Owusu. Also, you are muted. Then we go to Aziz as we come to the closure of the session. Aziz?
Yeah, hello, sir.
Yes,
yes, Owusu.
Owusu can, yes.
Yeah, I think I just put mine in a nutshell, as I said it all together. And I think just to touch on what Mr. Mohammed just spoke about right now, that the next time we meet, it wouldn't be about just talking about it again, as we can give an update of what we have done so far and all of that. So I am looking forward that, just as I mentioned, I have a registered hub I call the Legends Hub. It's an entrepreneurship development hub, a startup for that matter. And we are looking forward that climate change actions will be an integral part of our activities. So I'm looking forward to it, that the next time we are talking about climate change, I can give a good update that even if we planted 1 tree or a single tree, it will be a good update to help with climate change. So I look forward that if there is any of us here who would want to do a partnership or whichever way. Last year I attended a Model UN conference and I had people from Kenya, from Nigeria, from Sierra Leone, from Lesotho, who were willing to be ambassadors of the hub. So I'm just putting it before all of us on this call that in relation to the climate actions, if anybody would want us to partner or take actions, practical actions or implementing actions to the progress of climate change, I am open to that discussion too. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Owusu. And before this joins, we can hear from Laboshi and Maria. Maybe we can hear from Laboshi first, then we'll go to Maria, then Aziz. Laboshi? Yes, we can hear, we can see your hand lifted, the Laboshi. But you are muted, Laboshi.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. You know, yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Andrew. As we are going to, we are coming to the closure of our meeting, I would like to call everybody, you know, and my final word is that let's move to actions by pulling our effort together in order to combat the enemy of our mother nature, which is the climate change, and restore the environment landscape. Here we are been exchanging strategies and how the climate change has a negative impact on our communities. And as I said, we are not going to stop by here. I would advise every partner, everyone, to start implementing, to start with actions, so that all what we have learned from the meeting may not.
Sorry, so sorry, Labosri. Labosri, I think he has connectivity issues and actually he has been thrown out. Maria, please, kind of.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me, Andrew?
Yes, Maria, you can hear you.
So we're doing a relay with connection issue between the beginning of the call and the end of the call. I don't want to be long, and I just want to thank everyone about the insight, because that's really what it is all about, is to sharing our different perspective. I think the one thing from my side is really important, because we deal with it with adults in decision, is whatever you decide to do at the education system, especially if it's with children, is really to be able to show the connection between things. So if you do climate change, link it with the root cause, link it with environment, show them how things are connected, show them that it's linked to our economic system, our way of thinking, because you are framing the mental model and the reality of this youngster. And the earlier we can open their mind, and the second point is give them the confidence and the self-esteem to challenge the status quo and shift paradigm. That actually they might come with idea that we've never thought about. They might have view of the world. So let's not be too rigid in our approach to how we should look at climate change.
Thank you.
Hallelujah,
Thank you.
amen.
Thank you so much, Maria. What we have picked from you is we need to be flexible and we need to be innovative enough and take action. Zoe, then we go to Aziz. Zoe, please.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. And everyone who's been part of this have been keenly listening and taking notes. And it's just an amazing, amazing insights which you can pick from this. And obviously, I was just reading through the comments. Next time you meet, just reading what Shobina said, that next time you meet, we should share update to how and where we're implementing these actions, because that's the best way that we can channel some of the outcomes of these dialogues and workshops. Yeah, so that's something that I'm really looking forward to. Have the next time we're going to have this, the conversations will be much more packed with insights and updates of what our community members have been involved with in putting what we've been discussing and dialoguing in. Yeah, so that's what I'm really looking forward to, but then it's a great start to an amazing dialogue given to the future.
Thank you so much, Zoe. The practical part of it, of course, that is what is coming out from many of us, actually from all of us, the practical part. We are talking today, yes, but what are we going to do after today's talk? In our small way, let's see what we can do. Then Aziz, then Robin will summarize and close the session.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. There isn't much to say after having these people, beautiful people with us for a long time. We would like to thank them so much for staying connected and for the dialogue. Of course, the dialogue has just started. Probably say that we at Africa Voices Dialogue, we already have 2 hubs, one about heritage and one about peace building. It will be interesting if we have some people who have been in this dialogue together with us, showing interest in another hub for climate change and education. Yes, and we would love to connect later, not just for another dialogue, but probably connect for, because the word sustainable is a word that has been related to climate change forever. We would like to connect for sustainable dialogue over this issue and see what we can do together, either by raising questions. I think we have raised a lot of questions today. These are very, very interesting questions. So the more questions you raise, the more interesting the dialogue gets. We've seen that, as Mary said, it's a systemic issue. It's not just climate change. Climate change is probably at the center of everything now, and there are plenty of issues. So it's a complex issue. It's a, as they call it, it's a wicked issue. It's not a simple phenomenon, and there is more than just education to it. It's related to various things. By the way, the word that was featured in COP27 is frustration, because everyone is frustrated about lack of commitment at the policy level. And as a professor who's been connected with ecology, Ernest Nies, who has written books on ecology, said policy the change that policy can bring is enormous, based to the scientists. What the scientists say, science is nothing if we compare it to policy making and policymakers, because they are the ones who make decisions. But at the same time, educating the kids about climate change can be very interesting if they at least take action later when they become decision makers themselves. So thank you very much for connecting with us. It's been the way I've seen the dialogue unfolding is very interesting. It started bit by bit, but we've seen how much we have talked about, and I think that we have amplified the voices of Africans, but with the presence of 3 continents in this dialogue. We have people from Europe. We have people representing Americas. We have Africans with us, and that's huge. That's very, very interesting. And I think that we have
Asia
from Asia. So that's 4 continents together, all together in one dialogue, which is very, very interesting for AVD family. And just one last thing, you are our family. You are AVD family. So just keep in touch with us, connect with us, and thank you very much, Robin.
Thank you. I just wanted to share something, because 2 points that have come up here, and Mohammed, I really appreciate so moving to practice and moving to me. That's critical, because nothing changes unless I change. And I think that this is, partly, Marie, what you were also emphasizing, that the way good policies are made are when good policymakers are made. And so this kind of concept of taking an issue, which is a huge, wicked issue, and pulling on that piece of string so that you really delve down a little deeper into what is it that underlies here, and how do I move into my own underlying assumptions and mindset and thinking, because only when I'm doing that can I actually start to think about educating, or why it would be important to bring this topic into the lives of our communities and children. And really this thing as well, that educating, actually not mad about the term educating, because it does stick it into a school setting, learning. So how do we learn? We have to start here with something very practical, very immediate, and in our own context. and still be able to pull that thread to see how does this fit in with the big systems, because it's kind of only at changing the fractals, the small bits, that the mindset starts to shift a little. And just to pick up again, and I wanted to share our whiteboard with a few of us who are left here from one of our past planning sessions with these hubs. You know, so the Africa Voices dialogue space, we quite clear we want to hold space in which people who care about specific issues that relate to learning. So what we really care about is learning on the African continent, and supporting the people on the African continent who are very interested in specific areas of that, to find each other and connect, and then be freed with that support underneath to actually work on these things together. And so just quickly, because our time is done, I wanted to just share kind of the visual of how we are feeling about the emergence of these interest groups and hubs, and how critically connected in, oh no, I can't, I hope I can move this down, no, I can't, how they connect into each other. Wait, here we go. Okay. And how that might address some of the complexity that we're seeing. So I don't know if that visual kind of covers it. If we look at the heart as representing this AVD conversation space within which people who care about these interlocking, interlinking, critical issues are able to find each other and bounce off each other and still think, but at the same time take action. Because until we can take action, nothing changes. So yeah, I just wanted to sort of share that in the context of why dialogue, why does it matter, and how do we move from dialogue to action? And this is an experimental space to see if we can do that. So Mohammed, I hope that that kind of gives also a little sense of, you know, this topic and this topic related to heritage and equity, because it's intimately related to parental and community engagement, intimately related to peace building, because we know climate and its impact on dislocation of communities and what that does for peace, for conflict, etc. These things are interrelated, but we can't focus on everything at once. So let's find the space that's critical to us, see if we can find friends, work together, and then come back together with the people who hold other pieces of this enormous, big, complex set of issues in our tiny little experimental space.
Robin,
so,
if you allow me just very quickly, because we have to send me an email with just what you said. I think you can copy on the others too who are interested, and I will feed back with the concept note on risk management culture, which could be applicable first to this question of climate variability and change and how we deal with it, but which could be also used as Neil said, which can be used for other things. So send what just you said no in few lines, copy it to whom you wish, and me, I will use it to feedback. And so from there, we start, and there is some suggestion to be concrete, as I said to Andrew, to be concrete, and we don't need to wait. No. If there is something somewhere, my dream would be to collect solutions, call them climate solution or education solution or awareness solution, and maybe the next meeting will be, it will be the marketplace for that. It will be show that. And so we say, that is good somewhere, that is good somewhere. So let's, if we agree that one of them is super good, we'll ask Robin and Andrew to find the necessary resources to upscale that to the whole of Africa.
Absolutely. And I think that's our hope. So, you know, for instance, what we're hoping is the Heritage and Equity Network, instead of us then kind of holding the session, actually bringing what they are doing, because that's where it counts. And it's inspiring. So to do the same kind of in these multifocal areas of interest. So thank you, Mohammed. I will have to listen to the recording and rewrite it, but we'll aim to do that. Anyway, thank you, everybody. Jin, it's been so nice to have you here. We're just so sad that we haven't heard your voice. For the last few of us who are on, because Tulisile, I don't know that, and it was Jin, Tulisile, and Mohammed, I just quickly want to show you our next dialogue is going to be on the end of March, and it is on our parental engagement and empowerment again. So that's going to be coming up 29th of March, 29th, 28th. We will send out anybody who's RSVP to any of our dialogues should get the new invite, but if you don't, it might be in your junk mail. So please just keep an eye out towards the end of March. And Mohammed, Tulisile, and there, yeah, anybody who's not yet on our, and Jin, if you would like to join the Africa Voices Dialogue WhatsApp group, please do. See. All right. Thanks, Andrew. Cheers, everybody. Thank you so much for staying such a long time. It was long.
Thank you, everyone. See you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Silvana, it was good seeing you here. Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you, Tulisile.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. Cheers, Tulisile. Okay. Thanks, Aziz.
It was a good dialogue.
Okay. Thank you.
Cheers, Tulisile. Cheers then. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, Tulisile.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
So, are you still? Where are you now? Ah, you're home. You're back home. I see. I can see that.
Yeah, I'm back.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. How's everything?
Yeah, good. Thank you. How's everything with you?
Not very good. Thank you.
Not very good. What's up?
No, not very good. I am very pressed for things. My two co-authors are putting a lot of pressure on me to send them. I'm working on two papers at the same time now. Okay, and they are putting a lot of pressure, especially Ira. Ira is putting too much pressure on me because we've been doing this for a long time, I guess. And the conference is coming. I have very good news. They gave me 10 years visa to USA. So me and Lamia and the Yaput's passport is still waiting at the embassy. They're going to send it to us very soon. So I do have the visa now, and I'm working on administration papers to be able to, so that my university can pay the flights for me. This will take some time, but yeah, there is a lot of pressure besides the work that I'm doing at school. And I can't kind of, and at the same time, I'm sick. I'm still sick. I don't want to take antibiotics. I don't know if I need them. I'm thinking of going back to see my doctor because I think we have lost immunity after being vaccinated. And, when I have a cold, but it's persistent. It doesn't go. Okay, I have those